The Stony Path. First read. Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to speak here on this day, on this beautiful spring morning. You are all so very kind. But today, in addition to that thank you, I want to thank personally the worship committee for pushing me, for challenging me to stop and sit quietly a while with my thoughts, and then, and this is truly the hard part, to try to make sense of those very personal thoughts. And so let's together, you and I, for good or for bad, let's see if I've been at all successful. Let's walk. Let's walk on the stony path. For me, it all began, my spiritual journey began in earnest the day I lost my religion for the very first time. Like many of us, for me, I learned the story of Jesus. My religion was, Jesus loves me, this I know. It was also Moses parting the Red Sea and receiving the 10 Commandments. It was the burning bush, and it was the little boy Samson slaying the mighty Goliath with nothing but his sling. But most of all, mostly, it was love. The love that Jesus had for me, an awkward, lonely little boy. And if I had been able to hold on to that religion, I might still be a Christian. But I lost it. Religion changed, and so did I. I was in a very fundamentalist church, the Jehovah's Witnesses, and I paid attention, for that was required of me. Perhaps the next part, perhaps thinking was an option, but paying attention certainly wasn't. And so I listened to the words and the content of those words that were being spoken from the pulpit. And I was still very young when I realized that while Jesus might love me, his Father, Jehovah, didn't love the vast majority of people in the world, who, according to what I was taught, were going to be destroyed by God himself at Armageddon. Well, I could not, and I still cannot, reconcile an all-powerful, all-loving God condemning anyone to death, much less eternal torment. And so my first religion, the first stone on my stony path, was lost. It was a big stone, a big, big stone. Even though I did not know it at the time, I was even then walking a path. The East Indian mystic Sai Baba walked a spiritual path that included both Islam and Hindu beliefs, and he was revered by members of both of these two great world faiths. It takes little imagination for us to believe this morning that his walk most certainly involved a stone or two to overcome. Sai Baba had this to say about walking his spiritual path. Man learns through experience, and the spiritual path is full of different kinds of experiences. He will encounter many difficulties and obstacles, and they are, and this is important, they are the very experiences he needs. I completely agree with Sai Baba. After I lost the first religion, the first stone of my youth, the second stone I stumbled across was rationality. And while I never became an atheist, I began to study not only Jehovah's Witnesses, but really all religions with a very, very critical eye. If Jehovah's Witnesses and the other faiths, other religions, were wrong about eternal judgment, What else could they be wrong about? And as I grew and I read and I studied, I learned that they were wrong about evolution, and they were wrong even about the very age of the earth. They were wrong about the origins and how the Bible came down to us. And much of what religion called God's law was simply cultural norms of the time in a very patriarchal society that I felt increasingly at odds with. And while I still believed in God, I looked for meaning and for truth with logic, not with scripture and doctrine. I can still remember, even then, the love of Jesus, the religion of my youth, which I found to be a pretty good way for anyone to live. But my rational religion, this rational religion, I created for myself a very potent mix of rationality to which I added, like an alchemist, progressive politics and activism. Did seem perfect for a time, but in the end, it was really a powerless religion, and it was unable to remove the tentacles of Jehovah's Witness and their fundamentalism from my mind or my soul. And so, I lost my second stone. I lost my second religion. The next steps I took on the stony path were very similar to steps taken by many of you, many other Unitarian Universalists. And those steps travel through the Roman Catholic Church. I began to become interested in the Catholic Church because it was the faith of my wife and her family, and because it seemed to be a place of magic, of priests, clerics, and nuns, and popes, and candles, and incense, and golden statues everywhere. But most importantly to me, Mary. No matter what else was said, there she was. Mary, the Mother of God. Made not a bit of sense to me whether the first religion, to either the first religion of my youth or the second religion I worshipped of rationality, but there she was. And I felt a real connection to something greater than myself, a deepening of faith that I had not felt for a quarter century. And so I learned to pray again. And this time it was on my knees. Up, down, the blood and the body of Jesus. Up, down, the rosary, the rituals. And all the while, Mary, she watched over. But eventually, my discomfort with the Catholic Church's teachings on matters such as birth controls, equality for women, and their very basic human right to make personal choices about their own body, and the Church's authority in questions of morals, led me very quickly to leave Catholicism. And even though I had not been a converted Catholic for very long, this was no easy step for me, because I did not want to lose my Mary. No more than I wanted to lose the love that I felt in my first religion, my first stone, or the truth I came to know in the second stone that I carried on my path of rationality. East Indian philosopher Sri Aurobindo had this to say: all fanaticism is false, because it is a contradiction of the very nature of God and of truth. Truth cannot be shut up in a single book, a single Bible, or Veda, or Quran, or in any single religion. And those echoed in my heart, and they became what I believed deep in my soul. And I also started to believe other things. I began to believe that each person is important. That being kind in all that you do mattered. That everyone, including myself, had a freedom to learn. And not only that, we all felt a sense of urgency to search for what is truth in our lives. That everyone ought to be able to stand up and use their voice. And that we should all work for a fair and a peaceful world. And that the very earth itself is divine. I was becoming something outside of religion that I did not understand yet. In losing not one, not two, but 3 religions, I came to realize that I was never going to find just the one right religion and that everything would be okay. Because you see, if you lose one religion, you assume that you can just go out and find another. But once you've lost a second religion or a third religion, you realize that your quest is deeper than just finding the one right religion. You become aware of, for the first time, that you are on a path and that it is full of stones. And it is personal. Personal. And so I began in earnest to walk my path, knowing that I could freely pick among any stone, study it, reject it, whatever is necessary, but keep the universal truth that I found within it, no matter what else I discarded, and that it would be okay. I reconsidered the stones that I had already tripped over: fundamentalism, rationality, Catholicism, and I kept what worked. It's not an all or nothing thing. A stony path from the first stone, I could keep love. I could keep the lessons of speaking in public. And I could choose to keep a belief in the divine, something outside of myself. And from the second stone, I could keep science and order and knowledge, that this place is remarkable on its own, and that we ought to hold creation in reverence. And from the third stone, I could keep the very potent mix of Mary, the Mother of God, and the ritual to celebrate the deep mystery of life. Black Elk said these words: "All over the sky, a sacred voice is calling your name." And I began to hear that voice, that feminine voice, louder and louder and louder. And it was the divine voice of the Mother of all in my life. And whether it was because I wished it so, that I wished to make that connection, or because she called me, it doesn't matter. I have long felt a strong calling from Danu, the Celtic mother of the gods. And upon hearing her voice in my soul and seeing her hands in all of my life, I began to pick up stone after stone after stone in my life and study those pagan stones that were strewn like jewels on my path. The new buzzwords for me have become meditation, tools of the craft, athame, wand, ritual, casting the circle, the four quarters, and most importantly of all, the Lord and the lady. And the lady. Heady stuff for an older man. I approached it like a child, skipping stones away that have not worked, and gathering all of the stones that do, perfecting ritual and magic with a K, and coming to believe, as Daka Avlin said, magic happens when you step on to the stony path and into who you truly are and embrace what fulfills your soul. The stony path. As I have become and began to more and more self-identify as a pagan, and specifically as a pagan goddess worshiper, I have continued to add stones to my crane bag, the magic bag carried by the druids of my ancestors. They're keeping bits and pieces of all that I have found along the way, shaping it into the very meaning of the word religion in my soul. And now, to find this place, to find a place, a community, to be able to share my journey is a blessing that at one time I could not believe was even real. But then, there I was, on the stony path, and I picked up yet another stone. Now, this stone is very different. It does not require my undivided love, although it calls to me to love unconditionally. It did not ask me to empty my pockets and my magic bag of all the stones that I had picked up, all the truths that I have found, but instead, it challenged me to search harder, to find more stones, to add to my crane bag, add to my magic bag, to continue to search. And then it asked me to live up to those truths that I had found on the stony path. Truth cannot be shut up in one single book or one single religion. The belief that each person is important. Being kind in all you do matters. Freedom to learn. Freedom to search for what is true. All people need a voice. Work for a fair and a peaceful world. And the earth is divine. I began to have yet another deeper understanding, and I found a community. Unitarian Universalism. When I look back on my stony path, I see plenty of rocks, plenty of stones. My path has been so rocky at times, I have almost given up and left, if for nothing else, just to step off the path for a bit and be content. It's just to be content in the now. Rest. But rest assured, I haven't of yet. And I most likely never will. And I suspect some of the very last breaths I take upon this earth, this plane, this now, this time, will be to praise the unknown as I have come to perceive it right there on the path. Perhaps even as I draw those last breaths. But that too will be part of my stony path. The Unitarian Universalist path we share, while certainly wide enough to admit most everyone, is littered with stones. For unlike most paths, the path they walk is stone-free. They keep the stones off the path and just keep one that they carry in front of themselves. But here we are, Unitarian Universalists. We keep the stones right here in the middle of the path, heaped on the sides of the path, for everyone, for each of us, for all to examine. What should we do with them? Should we set them down, never to be looked at again? To move from stone to stone, searching for the one perfect stone that makes the rest unnecessary? Or instead, should we go back, pick up some of those stones that have lain in our path as we outgrew or tripped over, and find the good within it, and therein find our religion, our personal religion? I close with these words from the 14th Dalai Lama, Tenzin Gyatso. The purpose of all major religions is not to construct big temples on the outside, but to create temples of goodness and compassion inside, in our hearts. Till we meet again upon the stony path. Blessed be, peace, and thank you.